here. I appreciate you being here. If you found the channel, congratulations. I'm just gonna set the chat there. My dog is drinking. I gave him snacks and treats. It's a little later than I usually go live, but I wanted to do some reading. I needed a distraction, and in the times that we're in, I think that this might help us, some of it. Now, you guys know that I like the website Academia EDU. It brings up papers and books from any library that's in its system, which is pretty awesome. And you don't have to have an account and pay for it. They're not a sponsor of mine. I obviously have no sponsors. But I like them that much. And if you're a researcher geek like myself, then you might like them too. Sorry, I had to get comfortable. So what we're going to read from today is, I can't even remember what it's called. Why is it doing that? Essentials of Demonology. I'll read you a little bit of, hold on, the table of context and a little bit of the preface. I think it's important that we go as far back to the root of information as we can in our, physical libraries, and the internet can help us do that, and it can be, quicker. I've had a rough morning, so like I said, a rough day. So like I said, I need a distraction, and I'm gonna read this anyway to do some research. It is a book. I'm not gonna read the whole thing here. It's pretty hefty. I imagine it would probably be the size of a family Bible if you had a physical copy. But because I need a distraction, I'm gonna go ahead and read a chapter of this book that I found to you. It's Essentials in Demonology. Now I'll read the table of contents, sorry, and I'll attach a link to this book if you'd like to read it on your own. But I'm going to read from chapter 2, and you'll probably see why when I go through the table of contents. Let's read a little of the preface. It says, the belief in demons and angels is woven into the fabric of Jewish and Christian teaching concerning God, man, and the world from its earliest period until the present time. How large a place in Christian theology the conceptions of good and evil, supernatural or superhuman powers have held until the last century can only be fully appreciated by research students who are willing to spend much time and labor in the study of ancient theological treatises, embracing systematic theology, volumes of sermons, tomes of church history, as well as medieval literature in general. The dominating position in Christian thought formerly means something that was held before today, held by the conception of Satan, the demons, and the angels, will not be gathered from modern theological treatises, sermons, or other current religious literature. These conceptions, it is true, have not been entirely eliminated. The terms Satan or the devil, demons or evil spirits, and angels still form part of our inherited religious terminology, but anyone who studies the writings of the accredited teachers of the churches of today will be forced to admit that in relation to our subject, these stand in great contrast to the teaching of the church in any former period of its history since the time of the apostles. Things that were formerly regarded as substantial realities have now become mere shadows. Ideas that were once near to the center of the picture have now a place only upon the fringe. Teachings which, until the modern period, were of vital interest to the profoundest minds of the church are now viewed as out-of-date conceptions which have scarcely any relevance to the present experience of man. Okay, so that's a little bit of the preface. Now, why I'm getting into this. We are at the point where everybody is noticing that certain groups of people seem to be running things. Nothing bad ever happens to these people. They seem to be all hoarding the wealth in their families and whatnot, and it's not from hard work or labor. And everybody's noticing that things have changed, that people seem cold, that they don't seem to have compassion or empathy anymore. Empathy is being called toxic even by people allegedly in the church. I think that by going back to the roots of angelology, demonology, basically the cosmic, what's the word I'm looking for? The cosmic setup. I said it yesterday. Again, it's been a day. I'm sorry. I think it would do us well to learn how they used to view things because these things were a reality and people were not called crazy. They didn't make up issues like demon syndrome to cover up the fact that these things existed. They were talked about in the open. And this is actually what we're facing today. Now, I'm going to read you from chapter 2. There's a reason I chose this chapter to read from. Um, and it is because I think it talks about Sasquatch in here. And I've talked before about them being in the hierarchy and how what people call the grays, the UFOs, whatever they are, how those seem to be above the Sasquatch. And how we've talked about also how is the hairy body, is the Sasquatch the mark of Cain? Because God says, "You shall be cursed to walk the earth, and no man shall know that when they look upon you, they can't murder you." Well, what does that mean? How would, hunters or people hiking, how would they know that this was a being not to do harm to? Like, what do they have that's different? And the only thing I could say would be because they have a human face, but the rest of them is this hairy, thing. That's not the actual mark, but I'm saying that's kind of the reference I gather. And I've plugged it in a few places in Christian theology and it seems to fit, but let's go ahead and check it out and see. Now, what I'm going to do is read to you some of the table of contents. Now, again, this is a hefty study, and this book was written in 1949, and older sources are the most ideal, I believe. Again, back to the roots. Somebody liked the video and then took their like it's a, I don't understand. The internet has gotten very bizarre. Hey, what are you doing? Let's go. There we go. Come on. All right, so I'm going through the pages. There we go. Essentials of Demonology. Why did you stop? Oh boy, please don't give me internet issues now. Why are you doing this? There we go. Corporeality of demons. Let's go back up. Let's go to. Why aren't you working? And let's go to 3. I want to read to you from the table of contents so you know what else is in the book, and that way you understand why I want to read from chapter 2 specifically. Why are you doing this? Go. Hello. Sorry, guys. Thanks for your patience. Okay, so list of illustrations, indexes, table of contents, I think. There we go. One more. Okay, so chapter 1 is all about ancient Semitic demonology, the background of primitive conceptions, Arab and early Hebrew, Babylonian, Assyrian, and early Hebrew demonology. Now that goes from page 1 through 10. Chapter 2, which is where I'm going to read from today, and if anyone wants to hear more, please, let me know. People don't really comment. I wish we had more fellowship. Chapter 2 is the demonology of the Old Testament and its expansion in rabbinic literature. So here are the categories. People who see demons and devils are in serious crisis. I'm not playing these games. Goodbye. The demonology of the Old Testament. This is chapter 2. The demonology of the Old Testament and its expansion into rabbinic literature. Now, this is why I want to read from this chapter today, because again, I believe people are noticing more than ever that people have changed and something has come upon them. So let's look at some of this. And again, the psychology of the matter, psychologists would say, well, these are just different facets of your own personality. I don't agree with that all the time, but there is some merit in what they're saying there too. So again, I try to bring some balance into the channel. It says the first part in chapter 2 is demonic serpents or seraphim, like Satan. And the next part in the chapter is the Se'irim, 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 or hairy demons. That's when I think we're talking about Sasquatch type things. The Se'irim in the Old Testament, the Se'irim as objects of worship, the form of the Se'irim. And then you have some other demonic animals. And then you have Azazel, the scapegoat, Lilith, the night demon, Deber, Keteb, and Aluka. Now that part, I believe, is actually from Psalm 91. Because Deber is the demon of pestilence, and Keteb is the demon of noonday, and Aluka is the leech-like demon. The first two are mentioned, not by name, I don't think, but they are mentioned in Psalm 91. It actually, I have sacred scripture from the very beginning. It actually has more in the Psalms instead of like generic things. It has the actual tribes who were going at it with each other, which is really helpful. Then you have the She'aim in the Old Testament and the rabbinic literature, the prophetic conception, the beginnings of a Hebrew demonology. And then you have Satan. So I'm going to read to you from that chapter. We'll see how far we get. I'll give you guys about 40 minutes of my time. Okay. So we are at page 38, I believe, chapter 2. The Demonology of the Old Testament and its expansion in rabbinic literature. It's kind of small, so I might need my glasses today. Let's see. Let's see how I... No, I'm good. Okay, demonic serpents or seraphim. Now remember, Satan is allegedly a seraphim, and he was also referred to as the serpent. Now, I also found the 5th book of Moses, which mentions the serpent and Satan and Eve being alone, which I always question. So we're also going to read that probably another day this week. Demons in serpent form. Reference has already been made to the fact that among many people, serpents are regarded as creatures of mystery and are associated with the supernatural. In some cases, a demonic character is directly attributed to them. The idea of demons in serpent form was familiar to the Egyptians. Now, again, this is very old theology. This book was written in 1949, and it took probably years to compile all the information that they put into this text. And again, nobody called anyone crazy back then. Nobody laughed at each other. And these are, as much as they might be paganistic, the Egyptians were very wise in a lot of things, and so were the Babylonians. So I don't, I mean, Christ lived in Egypt for a while, so I think it behooves us to look at some of the information that they have about these things. And again, nobody laughed at people, nobody mocked them or scoffed at them. Back then, the real problem was, how do we get rid of these things? And there's another section, I have another text actually that tells you how to get rid of certain things. So this is why we looked at angels yesterday. Today we're looking at demons, and then very soon we'll look at this other one that gives actual cases from way, 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 way back in the beginning of the church and how to get rid of certain evil spirits. Okay, here we go. And now it's interesting also to note that the Muslims regard the jinn or demons as spirits, but that just means to them, like I've said often, and I didn't know this till today, it just means invisible. It doesn't mean that it can't interact with you or be seen if it wants to and manifest in the physical. So it's important to remember that, because ghost hunting, oh, ghosts can't hurt you. Well, we're not really talking about ghosts, right? In some cases, a demonic character is directly attributed to them. The idea of demons in serpent form was familiar to the Egyptians. In Arab demonology, also the serpent takes a prominent place, and I've already cited the testimony of Herodotus upon his point. Similarly, in Babylonia and Assyria, demons and serpents are closely associated, sorry. In Persian mythology, the serpent Dahaka is the incarnation of the evil spirit Angra Mainyu. In view of these widespread beliefs, again, people from all cultures understood that there was a realm, another dimension that they were blocked off from, that the veil was hiding from them, right? But they knew that they had to be aware of it so that they didn't fall into certain pitfalls. So, in view of these widespread beliefs, it is in no way surprising that parallel beliefs had found their way into the Old Testament. There is no doubt that the serpent of Genesis 3 belongs to this category of demonic animals. Though at a later period in the extra canonical Jewish literature and elsewhere, the serpent was frequently regarded as a temporary disguise or vehicle of Satan. That is manifestly not the original meaning of the passage. The serpent is not the embodiment of an evil principle, but is himself a demon, hence the punishment which is said to befall him. Several other passages in the Old Testament can only be fully understood when it is recognized that they refer to demon creatures in serpentine form. So they manifest as a serpent. Thus, in Numbers 21, it is said, "And the Lord sent fiery serpents," literally seraphim serpents, "among the people, and they bit the people, and much people of Israel died." In verse 8, it is told how the Lord commanded Moses to make, quote, "a fiery serpent," or a seraph, and put it upon a pole. When those who had been bitten looked upon the brazen serpent, they lived, kind of like hair of the dog. Fiery flying serpents. See, they don't like me going over this stuff because I've even had people on the channel try to discourage me from getting into demonology, and I understand the dangers. Trust me, I pray often and do self-deliverance often. Um, they don't want you to know their names. They don't want you to think they're real. They want people like me to be mocked and ridiculed. But what else is things like bullying and gang stalking and blackballing other than some type of demonic diabolical act? Or today you see people with how they have no compassion, how empathy again is being called toxic. It's a sad state of affairs. And again, I'm kind of tired of politics. The writers that are doing America this season, they got from wrestling apparently because it's just lame. And so I'm only going to do videos on that type of stuff when the Lord puts it on my heart. Fiery flying serpents. Three other passages may be considered along with this. Deuteronomy 8:16. "Who led thee through the great and terrible wilderness, wherein were fiery," or seraphim, "serpents." Makes me wonder, did they have the little wings? How you kind of see in old artwork with the serpents that had the tiny wings, almost like small dragons? Makes me think. Serpents and scorpions. Isaiah 14, "For out of the serpent's root shall come forth a basilisk, and his fruit shall be fiery flying serpent," a flying seraph. In Isaiah 30, this fiery flying serpent is spoken of as inhabiting the southern desert between Palestine and Egypt. There is no doubt that in these passages the reference is to a popular mythological conception associated with serpents as demonic creatures. The Hebrew word seraph comes from a root meaning to burn, and in all probability the name was given to the serpent on account of its burning bite and the inflammation which arises therefrom. Well, or the fact that it's the seraphim in serpent form, because seraphim are said to be fiery angels, right? Angels with swords of fire guarding the entrances, the gates, the portals to Eden, which is our heaven, paradise. The word flying, which is added to the word flying, which is added to the description in the Isaiah passage, may simply have reference to the swift darting movements of the serpent when in pursuit of its prey. But more probably, it is to be understood as denoting such composite forms as are characteristic of Egyptian and Babylonian religion. Yeah, we've seen some of that in old artwork. Now, part 3, the seraphim. The only other passage in the Old Testament which refers to the seraphim, plural of seraph, is Isaiah 6. Here also they are conceived of as winged creatures. Each seraph is said to have 6 wings. And again, seraphim are said to have 3 faces, three different persons. So that would make sense if each one has had a set of wings. But in this passage, there is no longer any trace of the serpentine form. Presumably, the form is now conceived to be human, though this is not clearly stated. But they are said to have faces, hands, and feet. Right? They're said to have 3 faces, and people don't believe me, but they're here. I've met some. I know some of them. The fact that in form and function there is a considerable difference between, quote, fiery serpents mentioned above and this conception of Isaiah is not a sufficient reason for denying the original identity of the conception. Many illustrations of a like evolution of animal into human forms can be cited from Egyptian and older religions. Shapeshifters, right? Which we know angels can do when we talk about these supernatural matters. I'm sorry, I'm having a day. People don't believe me, but I said it yesterday when I did that short video about Baal. After I published that short video about Baal yesterday, 3 channels that I'm subscribed to after me, a good hour after me, did videos about the Baal room. Everybody says they're not taking content from me, but they are. I don't need to make money. That's not the point of why I do this. But the point is, I was told not to monetize the messages, so the people that do, your money's cursed. Like, that's just flat out. Because God told me specifically, don't monetize these messages. Okay. The fact that in form and function, oh, we read that. Okay, here we go. Many illustrations of a like evolution of animal into human form, shapeshifting, can be cited from Egyptian and other religions. That such was actually the origin of the seraphim is suggested by the fact that in 1 Enoch 20, quote, the serpents are mentioned along with paradise and the cherubim as being under the rule of Gabriel. That's interesting. That Mandela effect story, analog horror, it's very biblical, and it's about these people who are imposters. You guys should check it out if you get a chance. It's again, I don't know if they're writing this script or if these things are actually happening, but I know they're happening in my life. So okay, so it says they're apparently to be identified with Isaiah's seraphim. A number of authorities have sought to establish a connection between Isaiah's seraphim and the seraph, which appears as the guardian of graves in Egypt and as the bearer of the deceased Egyptian kings to heaven. For the reason given, however, the above derivation is to be preferred. 2. Now, this is where we get to what I think is the Sasquatch. If you've made it to me with me this long, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Yeah, there's nobody here. Oh, the Lord is making me feel like I want to quit today. Well, not the Lord, but like just pressure. And again, I'm trying to help with this, and I understand that longer videos require a longer attention span. But this is just more proof that the only people who watch my videos are other creators who want to use the information. So this is the part of this chapter that's about hairy demons, which I think refers to Sasquatch. But let's see if I'm right. And again, you get into later on in this book and the other writing that I have for later in the week, you get into how to be delivered of these things and how to be rid of them. And I think that's key for right now. So if somebody's having any demonic issues out there or any type of like gang stalking or spiritual warfare, this text might help you. I'm not going to read the whole book, but I will read parts of it here and there. So these hairy demons are called the Se'irim. It's Se'irim. I think I'm saying that right. In the Old Testament, it has been seen that the Arabs frequently conceived of demons as assuming the form of animals, which haunted ruins and desolate places. Similar conceptions are likewise found among the Babylonians and Assyrians. In many cases, these demons are portrayed as hairy beings. Creatures of this character appear in a number of passages in the Old Testament. For instance, Leviticus 17, it is said, quote, and they shall no more sacrifice their sacrifices unto the he-goats, after whom they go a whoring, end quote. The same Hebrew word is found again in 2 Chronicles 11. Now, if older words are used here, it's because this book is from 1949, immediately after the Book of Enoch was found. And so they're already quoting the Book of Enoch here, which means, it was taken seriously by serious researchers and theologians. Hello, and thank you for being here. Okay, the same Hebrew word is found again in 2 Chronicles 11, where also it's translated as, quote, he-goats. It says, and he appointed him priests for the high places and for the he-goats and for the calves which he had made. So again, you get the idea of the hierarchy, and they have their own high priestesses. That's interesting. Which again might be the Greys. I think the UFOs control the Sasquatch. And again, I'm trying to plug this in here, but if it doesn't work, then you have to get rid of it, right? That's what we try to do as serious researchers digging for truth. If your theory doesn't fit, get rid of it. You don't change the facts to fit your theory. I hope that makes sense. In 2 Kings 23, we also should probably read, quote, the high places of the Se'erim rather than the high places of the gates, i.e., reading Se'erim instead of She'erim. That makes sense. Along with other animals, the Se'erim, I'm going to have to look up how to pronounce that, are again mentioned in Isaiah 13 as dancing among the ruins of Babylon. And once more in Isaiah. That reminds me of the wild things with the hairy beasts that look like Sasquatch, and they're always wanting to have fun and be goofy. Sasquatch are like that. Like, I'm not gonna lie, they play with people. They're Nephilim. They're a genetic experiment, like some of us have been. And I don't condemn them for that. I think, anyone can repent and go to God. So that's just my, hope that anyone can be saved. Um, but yeah, I'm sorry. That would make more sense. So they are goofy. I have seen, again, they will play with people, they will move things around in people's houses. Like if you go to the woods and you disobey the rules and you take something back with you to your home, you're giving legal right for these things to follow you. I did a video probably about when I first started this channel, there was a commercial out about Airbnbs. And the Sasquatch, all different colors, come out of the woods and they go into this house, an Airbnb, and they turn into humans. And then they write a note when they're leaving, we took care of your home, please take care of ours when you visit. And as they walked out the human dwelling place, the home, the Airbnb, they turned back into the Sasquatch. There are certain people who are in certain secret societies who are colorblind. That is something that follows hairy beings. So it's possible that they're not always hairy either. And again, I'm just kind of throwing things out there. This is a channel of HighStrangeness, so it is what it is. All right, so they do act like that. Like I know they like to play and have fun and goof off. They don't consider that they're kind of like fairies that way. They don't consider that they're doing harm. Okay, and once more in Isaiah 34, in company with other wild beasts, as finding an abode, among the ruins of Edom. In these 2 passages, the Revised Versions translates by satyrs. The LXX translates the term in the passages in Leviticus and Chronicles by foolish things, and in Isaiah passages as demons. So they're saying there that there are these different phrases or words, titles for these beings used interchangeably. From what has been said above, it is evident that in the 2 Isaiah passages, the reference is not to mere natural animals. The fact that in Isaiah, the Se'arim are mentioned along with Lilith, the night monster. She comes up in like one of the next 2 passages I'm going to read to you. So we'll get to her today. From what is, and again, I was always told that Lilith was like a lie, like that was mythology, that was a Gnostic thing. But this book is from 1949 and they're including her as a night demon. Like what do they call that? A succubus, right? Okay, so moving on. Okay, so they are mentioned along with Lilith, who is a night monster or night demon, implying that they are viewed as belonging to the same category or of supernatural or demonic creatures. For we have seen that Lilith appears as a notable demon in Babylonian demonology. The large place that she occupies in rabbinic literature will be noticed presently. Yeah, we're getting to that. That other well-known wild animals, ostriches, jackals, and wolves, are mentioned along with the Saarim creates no difficulty in view of the close association of demons and wild animals in Egyptian, Arabian, and Babylonian and Assyrian religion. That's a mouthful. Now we're going to get into these Saarim, the same topics. This is a little sub passage. We're talking about the same hairy beings as being objects of worship, and that's what you're seeing right now happen in all of the national parks. That is a part of the missing 411. Missing 411 is a few different things happening at the same time. And there's a reason that certain people have hid from people searching for them. I did a video on that a while back. All right, so this is the Saarim as objects of worship, meaning what we're seeing now. All these things happen in the national parks, all the Bigfoot everywhere. Like he's very big right now. So we're going to talk about the Saarim, or the hairy ones, as objects of worship. The two other passages mentioned, Leviticus 17 and 2 Chronicles 11, seem to imply that at one time the Saarim were not regarded as demons by the Semites, but as gods and goddesses, little g. Sacrifices were made to them. Like I said, that's what you're seeing in the national parks now. And the Jeroboam appointed, quote, priests for the high places and for the Saarim. Now, a priest, meaning in the way that an overseer, somebody who keeps them in line. I hope that makes sense, because I've talked about that regarding the Navajo and the Native Americans, how the elders are kind of gone now, and nobody learned these different rituals that they would do to keep these things at bay in the borders of the parks. Okay, here we go. Sacrifices were made to them, and Jeroboam appointed priests for the high places and for the Saarim and for the calves which he had made. We are compelled to think of the Saarim, and now it says right there, Jeroboam. Listen to this, because they kind of gloss over this. Jeroboam appointed priests for the Saarim and for the calves, which what? Which he had made. And the reference for that is in Kings 23. So you mean to tell me Jeroboam made his own beings? Is that genetic tinkering? What is that? What do you guys think? If you're still here, or if you are here, let me know. We are compelled to think of the Saarim here as hairy creatures, probably in the form of calves and as objects of worship, or goats. There is evidence to show that such creatures were worshipped by the Assyrians and the Phoenicians, who again were very likely a tribe of the fallen ones. There are also clear indications that such worship was well known to the Israelites and even practiced by them. Absolutely. The worship of the golden calf is a sufficient proof of this fact. So is the pictures of them giving their babies to Baal. Illustrations of this form of worship have been found on the site of ancient Gezer, where remains of cow and calf statuettes have been discovered, which clearly point to the worship of a god or goddess or flocks and herds. At a later period, when the worship of Yahweh had become established, these little g gods and goddesses were naturally degraded to the rank of demons, which people do today, right? This appears to be a better mode of explaining the allusion in the passages in Leviticus and Chronicles than to find in them a reference to an Egyptian cultus of the goat, borrowed by the Hebrews from the Egyptians, practiced by them in the wilderness, and revived by Jeroboam after his residence in Egypt. It suits better the late date of the passages, which are respectively during exile and post-exile, and lies closer to the Isaiah conceptions. The allusions in Isaiah, however, imply a belief in the come on now, definite demonic character of the Saarim. We have therefore to suppose that what was regarded as an object of worship among the Palestinian branch of the Semitic race or by the non-Hebrew Semites, was by the Babylonian Semites viewed as a demonic creature. This difference of view presents no great difficulty since Babylonian religion is so dominated by the belief in demons. Um, so again, it wasn't a Christian thing. Before Christianity ever came around, they believed in wicked or evil spirits roaming the earth. They knew these things. It wasn't a question back then. You didn't have all the gaslighting that you have going on today. 3. The form of the Seirim. Now we'll get into what it looks like. As the usual significance of the Seir, singular of Seirim, it is a he-goat. It has commonly been assumed that these creatures were goat-shaped. The word itself, however, means simply hairy, and Wellhausen seems inclined to regard the etymology as implying only the hairiness of the Seirim. This would suit better the hypothesis that the allusion in Leviticus 17 and 2 Chronicles 11 is to the creature in the form of a cow or calf. On the other hand, the theory that Azazel, Leviticus 16, was the chief of the Seirim would strongly support the view that they were actually goat-shaped. If the conception is early, as is probable, in spite of the fact that it is found only in the later books of the Old Testament, it seems likely that the word expressed only the hairiness of the beings in question. If it is late, it is more probably implies that they were also goat-shaped. This reminds me of a character too that we see. I don't know if it's where the wild things are. Oh, I can't remember the name of the show. He's a big hairy guy and he had horns. Was it Sesame Street? No, because it wasn't Puffaluffagus. Puffaluffagus? Puffaluffagus. I don't know. Puffaluffagus. Huffaluffagus. I forget his name. But yes, there is a character also like this. When I remember what show it's from, I will let you know. But you're seeing this also in a lot of movies now that are being made, B budget movies, horror movies on Tubi and whatnot, where people are worshiping, these beings with horns. Sometimes it's a deer, sometimes it's a really tall, big, goat-like man thing. So this is again something that is leaking into pop culture because I noticed that truth seems to do that. Things that are true will just kind of bleed out of our culture, whether out of artists, I guess, out of writing, physical art, whether they've seen the thing or heard of it or not, it seems to come up over and over again. Um, It may be remarked that despite the English rendering satyr, there is no reason to suppose that there is any allusion to the Greek conception of the satyr as a creature, the upper part of whose body is that of a gross, sensual man, the lower that of a goat. Well, I don't know, man. Did you read Enoch? Maybe I read that wrong. There's no reason to suppose that there's any allusion. Huh. Interesting. 3. Some other demonic animals. In Isaiah 13, along with the Seirim, whose demonic character has just been considered, several other creatures are named which apparently belong to the same category, though in some cases they bear the names of well-known wild animals. A brief study of these terms will perhaps help us to fix the nature of the underlying conception in relation to the belief of neighboring peoples. It should be recalled that the passage refers to the permanent desolation of Babylon, which it is said shall be inhabited by these creatures. Now again, it's written in the book of Revelation at the end times, and I'm gonna summarize here. I'm gonna take some liberties. Um, it says that the beast will come out of the fields and be allowed to attack mankind. Now, I know why this is happening. I know why this judgment will happen. People don't want to listen to me or believe me about it, but that's what's said. And they will come where? They will fill Babylon. We are Babylon. America is Babylon. We're in Babylon. You've got to prepare your heart and soul for the things that you might see or might fall upon you. And you need to be strong for your families. We all need to be. So we have wild beasts. The Hebrew word signifies either desert dweller, crier, or yelper. And in Hebrew, it is Zayim. I'm going to speed read through these. It's just a couple because I want to get to where it talks about Lilith and whatnot. The second one is the doleful creatures, Hebrew for Okim. The word is parallel to Zayim and like that word is used only in the plural. Um, it comes, they think it's a jackal. The root word means to cry or to howl. Ostriches, which is different, and the Searim, the next term in our passage we have seen, is certainly a demonic creature. Wolves, the word which occurs only in the plural, comes from root meaning to howl or to screech. A suitable rendering. Come on. Okay, now they have some pictures. So we're going to go past that. Well, there we go. And jackals. Okay, so they go over jackals. The fact that the animal enumerated above, and which also appear in Isaiah 34, include well-known demonic creatures such as the Searim and Lilith, leads naturally to the conclusion that all the animals mentioned share the same character because they're grouped together in that passage. They are conceived to be either demons themselves, as in the case of the serpent, or they are incarnations of said demons. This conclusion is supported in Egyptian, Arabian, and Babylonian demonology. 4. Azazel, the scapegoat. Let's see what we can find out about him if there's anything new here. The ceremony of the Day of Atonement. While we are dealing with the subject of demonic animals, it will be well to consider what is said concerning Azazel in Leviticus 16. For according to some authorities, this creature belongs to the same category. Outside this passage, Azazel is not again mentioned in the Old Testament, but he appears in a different guise in the apocalyptic literature. Interesting. According to our passage, on the Day of Atonement, 2 he-goats are to be taken from the congregation of Israel and set before the Lord at the door of the tent of meeting. Then it is enjoined that, quote, Aaron shall cast lots upon the 2 goats, one lot for the Lord and the other for Azazel. Aaron is to present the goat upon which the lot fell for the Lord and offer him as a sin offering. But it is said, the goat on which the lot fell for Azazel shall be set alive before the Lord to make atonement for him, to send him away for Azazel into the wilderness. Interesting. It is further commanded that Aaron shall lay his hands upon the head of the live goat and confess over him all the iniquities of the people, and then shall send him away by the hand of a man that is in readiness into the wilderness. And the goat shall bear upon him all their iniquities. So all of the sin, we are told in the book of Enoch, shall be attributed to Azazel, which I find interesting because in the human world here, we are told that all sin will be attributed to Christ. But this seems to be Old Testament, so this is before Christ came. So we have to put Enoch, into some perspective there, because some people think that is still going to happen, and I'm still learning on that. The significance of this ceremony. It would be tedious to recall all the suggested explanations, this strange fragment of Jewish literature. Some of these can be ruled out without hesitation because they ignore fundamental considerations. The first important fact to be recognized is that Azazel is conceived of as a personal being. This clearly appears from verse 8. One lot for the Lord, and the other lot for Azazel. Secondly, it is clear that Azazel is viewed as dwelling in the wilderness, like the Searim, which have been considered above. And view, therefore, in what we have learned, are they going to say Azazel is the priest over them? Can you go to the next page, please? Of Arab and Babylonian beliefs relating to demons in the desert, the idea is naturally suggested that we have in our passage another survival from ancient Semitic beliefs in such demons. The passage might then be taken to mean that the sin of Israel, having been confessed over and transferred to the goat, is carried away to this unclean spirit whose abode is in the wilderness, that is, outside the bounds of the sacred camp. That makes sense. We have seen that similar rites of transference from man to animal existed among the Babylonians in the case of evil spirits. Further, the expulsion of evil, whether maladies or sins, meaning whether the expulsion of evils, whether maladies or sins, meaning transgressions you have committed or illness that has fallen upon you, from a community by their being laid symbolically upon a material meaning, has many analogies in other lands, right? In Leviticus, it is enjoined that when leprosy is in a house has been cured, the priest shall take 2 living clean birds. One of the birds shall be killed, the other, after being dipped in the blood of the slain bird, shall be let go out of the city upon the open field. This is a sign that the uncleanness of the house has been taken away. So also it may be urged the one goat is sent away for Azazel, not as a sacrifice, but as proof or a symbol that in the Holy Land there is no longer any unexpiated guilt. This idea is favored by the fact that the uncleanness attached both to animal and to man leads it forth. Okay. Let's move forward a little bit here. I want to go to there we go. 5. The night demon, Lilith. Here we go. In the Old Testament, it has been shown above that in the demonology of Babylonia and Assyria, there appears a triad of demons, an unholy trinity, a male and 2 females. Interesting. You see a lot of this in covens too, or people living together now. They call it a throuple. I can't believe I know that. Can't believe I had to say that. Anyway, a male and 2 females called Lilu, Lilitu, and Ardat Lily. It is generally allowed that the female demon Lilitu appears among the demonic creatures mentioned in Isaiah 34 under the name Lilith. In the AV American version, she is quoted as a screech owl. In the Revised Version, it's a night monster. The nature of these creatures has already been considered in our study of Isaiah, but Lilith calls for separate treatment because unlike the other creatures mentioned, she was conceived to possess human rather than animal form, and also on account of her prominence in the later Jewish literature. According to rabbinic teaching, Lilith was the night demon par excellence, like the night demon queen. I don't know. By a mistaken etymology, the name was supposed to be derived from the Hebrew word Layla, night, a derivation favored by the similarity of the 2 words, and also by the fact that Lilith was supposed to be specially active at nighttime. It is very probable, they do mention it, that this demon is referred to in Psalm 91, where the psalmist says, "Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night." And as I told you, nor by the pestilence by day. And in the old sacred version, it's called the Sacred Holy Script or Scripture instead of the Bible. They actually do put their names in those psalms. So we're going to get to more of that, so let's keep going. In rabbinic literature, Lilith is usually portrayed with long flowing hair and possessing wings. She is the queen of the Lelin, of night, which form one of the great classes of demons. She is probably to be identified with Agrath Bath Mahlath, yikes, against whom a warning is issued in TB. Okay, so they're talking about a Jewish text there that I don't know how to pronounce, so I'm not going to. It is enjoined that a man who should not go out alone at night, because an evil spirit of the name given, together with 18 myriads of destroying angels, roam about and is permitted to destroy anyone she meets. See, back then they were kind of superstitious, like nobody went out walking at night. I've taken my dogs out at night, but I haven't since something very strange happened to me in 2018. So I don't walk at night anymore, at least not in these times. Though especially dangerous to children, the Lilin, that group of Lilith demons, also attack men. Succubus, anyone? A man was forbidden to sleep alone in a house. Yikes. And it is said that he who ignores the warning is seized by Lilith. A formula. Well, so what is a man supposed to sleep with if he's single or if he. I don't understand. A formula for exorcising Lilith is given in that text. According to rabbinic tradition, Lilith was the first wife of Adam, to whom she bore other evil spirits, Shedin, Lilin, and Rushin. 3. Source of the conception. This Jewish conception appears to have much in common with the Greek word of the Greeks and with the Strix and Lamia of the Romans. Whilst the name and leading characteristics were clearly derived from Babylonian demonology, the conception of Lilith may also have been influenced by Persian ideas. Kohut draws a parallel between Lilith and Bushiankta, who was also portrayed as a female demon and a night spirit. A general similarity must be admitted, but the features of Bashianka are too indistinct to allow definitive conclusions. In view, however, the definitive traces of Persian influence upon other aspects of Jewish teaching in relation to our subject which exist, it's probable that they are to be found here also. Now, here you get to the ones that I think are mentioned by name here in Psalm 91. It has been remarked above that, 6. Deber, Keteb, and Aluka. It has been remarked above that Lilith, the night spirit, is probably referred to in Psalm 91, though left unnamed. In the same passage, there is here we go. He does mention it. There is probably also an allusion to two other demons, which are designated Deber and Keteb. The Revised Version reads, and I know from doing the liturgy of the hours that the older versions use their names, but the newer versions don't seem to. Okay, so it reads, Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flies by day, for the pestilence, Deber, that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction, Keteb, that wasteth at noonday. So imagine how powerful, because names have power, and I've told you how to read these Psalms to accept the promises. You have to read them in the first person. Where everywhere it says you have to say I in Psalm 91, unless you're praying it for somebody else. But imagine how powerful it would be, because normally we just say, for the pestilence that walketh in the darkness. It doesn't have the name of the demon there. But imagine how powerful a repellent it would be if you actually did plug in those names there, because names have power. Light is cast upon the meaning of the last two lines, the text which is partly corrupt by the LXX, which reads, nor because of the thing that go about during dusk, nor because of calamity and the demon at noonday. So they're referencing how poor and shoddy those translations are. Change. The translators of the LXX evidently saw in the last line a reference to a midday demon, just as the rabbis found in the first two lines an allusion to Lilith in the night demon. In the Midrash to the Psalms, Midrash Tehillim, we have this comment, quote, Rabbi Berikia said, there is a harmful spirit that flies like a bird and shoots like an arrow. The following facts seem to warrant the conclusions that behind the language of the psalmist in the last two lines, the form of the two demons of popular belief are to be discerned. Now they're going to get into those demons. Deber. The Hebrew word Deber means pestilence. We have seen, however, that in Babylonian and Assyrian demonology, diseases were frequently personified, or certain diseases were held to be caused by particular demons. Thus, one demon was believed to cause headaches, another, Ashiku, wasting disease, and there is evidence that similar beliefs prevailed among the Jews. There are references to Shabiri, the demon of blindness, to Ben Nephalim, the demon of asthma. Wow. So if you use these names, right, in a prayer, like say, Father, with the full force of my will and your permission, I rebuke the demon of Ashiku for such and such a person. I would probably say my son, because my son has had asthma issues. Again, names have power. So I'm glad we stumbled upon this bit. How much time do we have? Okay. Now, one notable Babylonian demon is called Namtar, a pest demon. He is described as wicked Namtar who scorches the land like fire, who approaches a man like Ashiku, who rushes through the desert like a storm wind, who seizes upon a man like a robber, who plagues a man like a pestilence, and who has no hands, no feet, who goes about at night. That reminds me of something, but I can't think of what. The dumb, deaf, and blind spirit. When that young man had to be delivered, but Christ said these ones only go out through fasting and prayer, because he kept throwing himself into the fire. This demon is the messenger of Alitu and strikes the goddess Ishtar with disease in all parts of her body. There can be scarcely room for doubt that the psalmist, in speaking of the Deber that walketh in darkness, has this demon in mind. 2. Keteb. This word is usually translated as destruction, but since it is here combined with Deber, it is naturally to suppose it also refers to a demon, because they're grouped together. This idea is supported by the fact that in the rabbinical literature, Keteb occurs as the proper name of a demon. He is said to be abroad from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Interesting. He's got a schedule. I'm sorry. It's been a day and I find that funny. That tickles me. He is said to be abroad from 10 a.m. to 3, but you can reach him after that. During the 3 weeks between Tammuz 17 and Ab 9. Oh, so he even has weeks devoted to him on the calendar. And again, that is said that each demon has a domain which relates to time, to our physical bodies, and to the physical land. Again, just like every verse has three meanings, a literal, a spiritual, and something relating to time. In Midrash Tehillim, in reference to this verse, it is said that, quote, the poisonous keteb is covered with scales and with hair, and sees only out of one eye. Ooh, Antichrist or Odin, anyone? The other one is in the middle of his heart, and he is powerful, not in the darkness nor in the sun, but between darkness and sunshine. Probably because he only has one eye. In agreement with our passage, later Judaism believed that certain demons were specially active at midday. Aluka. For the third of our terms, we turn to Proverbs 30, where the Revised Version reads, the horse leech hath two daughters, crying, give, give. As it stands in the Masoretic text, the passage is unintelligible, and no satisfactory emendation has been proposed. Apparently, it is a fragment of a lost proverb. Aluka is a proper name, and the marginal rendering yields better sense. Quote, the vampire hath two daughters called give, give. The vampire. The words seem to come from a root which means to cleave or to hang. Hence its suitability to denote the horse leech, which is often drawn into the mouth by horses of cattle when drinking and attaching itself to the back of the throat, causing loss of blood. The Talmud utters a warning against drinking water from a river or pool on account of the dangers of swallowing a leech. Well, yeah, but fresh springs are amazingly yummy to get water from. I haven't tasted it in years and I still remember it. It is quite natural that such a name should be transferred to a demon of the blood-sucking type, such as we know the Babylonians believed in. Interesting, considering the stuff I talk about with the marks on the neck that I've shared, I've seen on myself and people that I've worked with at a few different places years apart. The texts speak of demons that spill the blood of men, devour their flesh, and suck their veins. In view, therefore, of other traces of demonology derived from Babylonian sources that have been found, it is safe to conclude that the reference of our text is to a female demon of the Lilith type. A corresponding female demon called Auluk is found among the Arabs. A belief in such vampire-like demons is common to many people. Fascinating stuff. Okay, the Shadim. What time are we at? Let's keep going a few more minutes. 7. The Shadim. Shadim. In the Old Testament and rabbinical literature, yet another class of Babylonian demons makes its appearance in the Old Testament. In Deuteronomy 32, it is, and the Revised Version, it is said, they sacrificed unto demons which were no God, to gods whom they knew not, to new gods that came up of late, whom your fathers dreaded not, because they were not the true God. Again, Psalm 106 reads, yeah, they sacrificed their sons and their daughters unto demons, and shed innocent blood, even the blood of their sons of their daughters, whom they sacrificed unto the idols of Canaan. I actually kind of see that today as well, and a lot of people will disagree with me, but with very young people being drafted or kind of coerced into joining the military just because their parents were in it. I've seen a lot of that personally, and it makes me kind of think of the same type of thing. The term here rendered demons is the Hebrew shedim, plural of shed, An account has been given above of a class of demons of this name which occupy a prominent place in the religion of Babylonia and Assyria. Since it is used of both good and evil spirits, it appears to have been a general term like the Hebrew and Christian word spirit. The Shadim are frequently portrayed in the form of winged bulls and as guarding the entrances to temples. Again, you have angels that are described in very similar manners. In fact, the bull is that one of the faces, allegedly, of the seraphim. So, seraphim, we just read that the other day. I always get those two confused. Um, So if they had that attribute as an angel and they fell and become a demon, and a lot of people don't think that fallen angels are demons, they think they're their own thing. I don't know how I feel about that because they say there was demons before that, but how do we really know? Because we don't even get the story until man is made and immediately there is like this fall. So we don't know what happened, before that, not clearly. Oh, sorry. Uh, 2. Prophetic conception. The two Old Testament passages before us, however, probably reflect the opinion which prevailed during the 6th or 7th centuries BC that the gods of the heathen, whose existence and reality as powers were not yet questions, were rivals of Yahweh. The prophets repeatedly affirm their subordination to Yahweh. That's what I tell people. If you're going to read the Old Testament, lean on the prophets because the laws you see being made are being made by men. That's why it's erroneous. That's why God had to come and tell us, hey, this is how you do this. You're doing it wrong. Walk it out this way. Because they were sacrificing to false gods, to false idols. And every prophet says it, but nobody gets it. Nobody understands that there's two voices in the Old Testament, and they're not both the creator, maker, God. But most people don't pick up on that, and they don't want to pick up on that. So the prophets repeatedly affirm their own subordination to Yahweh, and sometimes use language which, on the face of it, seems to deny the existence of them. They're called no gods, emptiness, wind, vanity, or breath, corpses, and dead. But there is reason to believe that these terms are selected to express the impotence of these beings as compared with the might of Yahweh. That makes sense. For long after this period, the real existence of heathen little g gods is not denied, but they are reduced to the rank of demons. The same idea prevailed in the New Testament period, as we see in 1 Corinthians 8 and 10 and Revelation 9. It is also one of the dominant conceptions of the post-apocalyptic age. I'm going to read two more little parts here because we get to Satan in the Old Testament. 3. The beginnings of a Hebrew demonology. Although, as we have seen, the Old Testament contains many more references to demons than is usually supposed, it is probably true to say that in the two passages before us, we have the beginnings of Hebrew demonology proper. The other conceptions mentioned, for example, the Seharim, Azazel, and Lilith, have the character of importation, from external sources, or of sporadic survivals from popular beliefs. Except for the fact that they remain as elements in rabbinic folklore, they have left no strong impression upon the Jewish teachings. But the idea that heathen deities are real existences subordinate to Yahweh, and the further belief that they are hostile demonic powers, becomes from this time onward a main element of both Jewish and Christian teaching. 8. Satan. This is the last part of this that I will read today. If you want to hear this again in the next reading video, let me know. I might steer clear of politics for a while. I'm tired of being exploited. I'm tired of people using my messages to make their own videos and monetize them. In the Old Testament, Satan. So far as the teaching of the Old Testament is concerned, Satan can scarcely be said to belong to the sphere of demonology, for he possesses none of those demonic characteristics which we have considered in the preceding paragraphs. Nevertheless, we are able to trace here the first small beginnings. Change the page. Of that stream of Hebrew thought concerning a supernatural enemy of God and man which was destined to exercise a predominating influence upon the whole body of Jewish and Christian teaching concerning God and man in all succeeding centuries. As a distinct superhuman personality, Satan appears in the Old Testament in 3 passages only, namely Zechariah 3 or 31, or is that a footnote? Zechariah 3, Job 1 and 2, and 1 Chronicles 21. Okay. All 3 are post-exilic and are to be dated probably between 519 and 300 BC. The name Satan is to be derived from a root of Satan, which means to oppose or to act as an adversary. It is a pure Semitic word in early use among the Israelites. In its original sense, it occurs in a number of early passages. For instance, in Numbers 22, it is said that the angel placed himself in the way, quote, for an adversary, end quote, against Balaam. Interesting. Again, in 1 Samuel 29, the princes of the Philistines battle, he should become an adversary, Satan, to them. A similar usage is found in 2 Samuel 19, 1 Kings 5, and in Psalms 109, I believe. The term is used of an accuser or opponent in law. Satan becomes the official title of a distinct personality for the first time in Zechariah 3. But even here, it's not a proper name. It is used with the article, the Satan, and denotes the adversary who accuses men before God. In this case, the accused is Joshua the high priest. Satan is rebuked by Yahweh on account of his harsh attitude towards Joshua. Interesting. Not content with all the calamities that have come upon Jerusalem, he demands further punishment. Of course he does. In the book of Job, we have a fuller account of Satan's activities. Here also, the article is still used, and Satan is not yet a proper name. As in Zechariah, he is the great accuser of men in their claim to a right standing before God. He accuses Job of selfish and insincere piety. Here, however, there appears to be a considerable development in his character. He is now not only the accuser of man, he also urges God to test Job to the utmost extent in the hope that his piety will be proved to be merely superficial. With God's permission, he also brings upon Job these evils, which he eagerly anticipates will bring his downfall. 2 facts stand out clearly in this narrative. In the first place, Satan is evidently one of the angel ministers of Yahweh. He appears in Yahweh's presence among the other sons of Elohim to give account of his activities and to receive further divine commissions. He never acts without God's permission, and that's still true today. And his ministry is evidently included in the divine will. Satan cannot injure man unless God allows him to do so. Moreover, he is never really censored by God, even when he acts with the utmost rigor against Job, and Job stands the test. The second important fact is that there appears to be an element in the character of Satan which is contrary to the will of God. God delights in the deep piety of Job, the perfect man. Satan, on the other hand, would be pleased if he could prove that God's confidence in Job was misplaced. Even though he is acting with God's permission, he finds joy in his anti-human ministry. If not yet a malignant being, he is tending to become so. Where are we at? What are you guys doing? All right, I'm going to end this here. It's been an hour. If you guys want to hear more of this, I probably will continue it. I will leave it open to that page so we can continue right there when I next read this. If it's something you want in the next video, please comment and let me know. I could use prayers. My sons can always use prayer. So if you're the praying kind, if you could, pray for us as I pray for all of us pretty much daily. You guys have a blessed evening. I love you. Stay kind and stay aware. Observe your surroundings and the people around you because nothing is as it seems at this point. Bye, guys.